All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 8 o'clock. Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Okay. They're there. So I would like to welcome everybody to the meeting and our guests online. Good to have everybody here. I think we have a really good agenda. Move forward with, if everybody's reviewed the agenda, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda to forward with the meeting.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we're into the agenda. Right now, I do not see any action items on our agenda. We have moved to number 4, which are the information items, and we'll start with Broad Run Reclamation Facility and Chesapeake update.
And good morning. I'm going to actually give a quick intro, just sort of for the agenda, for the whole kind of agenda together, and a couple quick things.
You're not.
So
on
this
the
is
agenda?
the.
We got to start putting
Sorry.
you on the agenda.
I make a motion to modify the
Okay, second. Let's go. All right.
Well, I am. I just want to introduce presentations and mention. So it's technically our 3rd meeting of the year. We kind of think of this one as our quarter 2. The sequence we've gotten in the 4th quarter meeting. It's hard to get that in December, so it's kind of typically been the very first week of January. And so we'll have one more meeting this year. So we always kind of stick to the 4 years. So it'll be sometime this fall, late September, October. We're working on a few ideas for that. Today is the water quality theme. As we get in the fall, that's kind of our water supply theme in that one. So for the items today, as you see, the first one up, Kendra, which you've been hearing from her, some interesting stuff. This will be some continued, a little bit new information, and this is, really, I think we think this is really helpful because it continues to sort of share this information that gets complex, but it's the drivers for a lot of the planning for our phase 3 work. So I think it's just helpful that we have these opportunities to keep sharing, a little bit at a time. And then Jessica Dazar is here, and she's got the other 2, and we've just sort of recently completed the hydrant flushing program for this year, and never have really had a chance to kind of walk through a little bit more in depth of what that program is all about and all the purpose to it, and highlight some things there and the team that handles that. And then the third one is the EPA has in recent years amended the lead and copper rule. And so there's some things coming there. Today is kind of a brief, a little bit of an introduction to it. It's kind of the national scale. We've got time to kind of get into what we're doing, but we'll share a little bit of what some changes over the last few years have been and where we're headed with that. And the one final thing I will say, one final kind of a quick brief, not an additional presentation, but some real recent news that just came out that we didn't really have a chance to add to the formal agenda, but we just want to let you guys know about it. And that relates to real recently, the EPA put out a health advisory for PFAS. And we want to just give a quick little briefing as to just some of what that impact is and some information we've put together to share with customers if we have people call in, and some work we've been doing coordinating with the region, because again, this kind of is a national level type thing that everybody is kind of handling at the moment. So with that, Member Kendra.
Right. So with the update here that we're going to give you on Broad Run's waste load allocation, this is where the water quality that we put out, right, from the wastewater treatment plant and is coming together with the environment is really driving some of the work that we're doing. And some of the information is going to build on what we went through last year in the wastewater workshop, but we wanted to take a step back again and just remind, the Chesapeake Bay watershed is a really large watershed that spans all the way up into New York and comes down through Virginia. So there's a lot of moving pieces and just a lot of, populous urban areas, right, affecting this watershed. So when we start focusing in on Broad Run, this is actually a much larger picture, and we are a very, very small size, right, of what's going on in the Bay and achieving these goals. But the overall goals here for all of these states was to limit nitrogen and phosphorus entering the Chesapeake Bay to improve aquatic health. right? They were having the eutrophication, so algae growth in the bay was taking up the oxygen and really affecting the wildlife there. So when they came through and did this large program, there were goals given for each state. Each state has a certain amount of nitrogen and phosphorus that they can discharge to the bay, and those goals changed over time. So that was giving a phased approach of you don't have to reach low now from the beginning, but there are time indicated targets of where we need to be. And so when we look at Virginia, Virginia slice is broken down by watershed. And so, you know, at Broad Run, we are up in the Potomac watershed, and a lot of the urban areas, right, are all in this watershed. So you've got a lot of really big wastewater treatment plants in the Potomac shed. And then as you go further south, right, you're getting to smaller communities, a lot less urban, and each one got a slice based on, there's a model for all of the states together, right? So they are looking at how everybody is impacting it together and trying to give equal slices. So when Virginia then, you know, was given the ability to regulate this, they did it through a general permit for the state, and all wastewater treatment plants are given an allocation in that general permit, and there are requirements in the permit on how they're going to monitor your nitrogen and phosphorus discharge, what kind of reporting you have to do, and how you might handle changes in your flows or loads over time. And so, you know, through that, it's really the process that they have is every 5 years, they just renewed this general permit. And as part of that, we had to provide a nutrient offset plan. And this was our plan that we submit to them. Everybody had to resubmit it at the 5-year renewal on how we're going to meet our waste load allocation. But that nutrient offset plan is also required if you're going to expand your plant. So if you're saying, I'm going to discharge more wastewater, they have a process that says, what's your plan to meet your waste load allocation? But there is no process to get more load allocation. It's how are you going to discharge more flow within the existing pounds of nitrogen and pounds of phosphorus you have. And this is really the struggle for Broad Run. And so right now, we were given a waste load allocation based on 11 MGD flow. And this is truly flow discharged through the plant into the Potomac. So it's minus anything we're devoting from reclaim. So our plant right now has an 11 MGD capacity, but we discharge about 6 MGD, right? We're taking in about 8, but on average, anywhere from 2 to 3 are going to reclaim. So we're really nowhere near, you know, discharging our current waste load allocation, but we're building expansion to 16.5. So DEQ has already asked us, well, how are you going to treat to these nutrient levels? Because we're going to allow you to build this. So we want to know how you're going to reach a 2.67 and a 0.067 on TP. Now, the state in regulation defines state-of-the-art technologies as a TN of 3 and a TP of 0.18. So we've already acknowledged to the state that Broad Run is exceptional. And yes, we feel like we have everything in place to meet this equivalent concentration, which we wouldn't have to do until we actually discharge 16.5 MGD. That is well into the future, but they wanted to know our plan when we built it. And the first step, we're still going above and beyond anyone else in the state by saying that we can achieve those concentrations. Our problem now is phase 3 is really pushing us to a breaking point and saying that, yes, we can do this. And yes, that we feel it's reasonable to expect Broad Run to be this exceptional to do it. So right now we are estimating the capacity that we want to build to in phase 3 is going to be somewhere between this 22 and 30 MGD. But these are very low equivalent concentrations that DEQ would then look at us and say, okay, where's your nutrient offset plan that says with your current waste load allocation, you can meet these concentrations? And so we said, let's take a step back, right? And talk about this as, you know, a statewide approach. Is it reasonable to take one wastewater treatment plant and push it to this level when we're talking states and states, right? This is thousands of treatment plants achieving this bay allocation for the amount of money and resources, chemical energy it's going to take for us to reach these, is it what we really think is in the best interest of the environment, the state, to do this? And so internally for our plan, we have tools to say that we can keep extending this existing waste load allocation that we can well into the future. Our reclaimed water system is our biggest tool in this right now, because it continues to make it where we can treat more than we're discharging, so that load allocation goes even further. And that means a lot to the state that we're doing that it's a tool that we're investing in, and really doing our best to diverting flow from the Potomac is another way to divert those nutrients, and in an energy effective way, right? We're not having to treat that as far. We're not processing potable water, right, where we should reclaim it. That is a win-win category. So the regulations allow for the nutrient exchange. So nutrient credit trading is a tool here, but it cannot be the solution. We need hundreds of thousands of pounds of nitrogen to get expanded into a 30 MGD facility, and the nutrient exchange only guarantees 5 years ahead of time. So we don't know that in 2040, right, that there will be 100,000 pounds when everybody else has built out, is using more of their waste load allocation. So this is a tool we can use in the short term, but it's not the long-term solution. But it does, again, extend the time that our
What is
waste.
the nutrient exchange?
So the nutrient exchange is a board created for the state of Virginia, where each utility says, I'm going to have this many credits left over at the end of the year, and so I'm going to let the exchange take them. And if somebody wants them, they can buy them, and the exchange is going to pay me for those extra credits. So it's really a controlled exchange between anyone and any of those sheds can be in the exchange, but the exchange only allows us in the Potomac to trade within the Potomac. Everybody else in the other shed trades within their shed, but we're all in the same exchange. So it still rolls up to Virginia's ultimate goals.
Who's in the exchange? Who makes the decision?
There is a board. So it is somewhat related to VAMWA, but there's a nutrient exchange board that is elected representatives from each of the sheds form the board, but there are regulations. It was proposed and adopted by the state, and there's a governing document on how the exchange works.
So we should have a surplus, right? Because
We do,
do we get money for that?
we do, yes.
How much is it?
Not much at all. There's a lot of credits on the exchange right now.
Today. there's a lot
Today
of
there
credits,
is,
yeah.
yes. And we are in the Potomac right now, the third biggest holder of excess nitrogen credits, which is why it's really hard for people when we come to this next slide that we're talking about needing more waste load allocation, because there's so much on the exchange right now. But it takes so long to build this infrastructure that we have to talk about 2040, when things are going to look different than what it looks like right now, which I have a schedule slide that we'll get to, and kind of doing that challenge of, yes, we need to talk about it now so that we can get assurance to build, but this is a problem for way down the road.
The credits are only good annually, so.
Right, it is a one-time buy, it is not a forever purchase. You can forever purchase credits for someone, but that is a utility to utility purchase that does not go through the nutrient exchange. So if you wanted to say go to Fairfax County and permanently buy some of those credits, you would then have an agreement with Fairfax County for that
It's a
trade.
great question. Something
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you don't know what's going, things could change. And so,
They will
you know, that's where it is.
How long do
year by
they
year.
last for? Like, is it annually you have to?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Every year they're checking the balance and seeing where it's going. The price changes every year. So if you buy them, your price is at the mercy of whoever else is buying and how many they need and how many are available, right? So it's a yearly fluctuation of price, but they ask us to guarantee 5 years in ahead how many we're going to have. So Loudwater has already submitted and said in 5 years, this is how many credits we'll put on the exchange. There's a process to change that, but the board has to approve it. So they could say, no, if we put too many out there, yeah, they could say, no, you can't take it back.
Kendra, is it fair to say that, like, when we're looking at a 2040, our whole utility business. That's why you can't just say, well, our offset plan is just to buy the nutrient credits, because
Right.
it's not that.
It's too far beyond what the exchange window is.
Do the credits have to be used in the year in which they're purchased?
Mhm.
Okay.
Hi, this is Keith. I want to ask a question. To use the nutrient exchange, is there a transaction fee? I'm just trying to understand is there certain types of fees associated with being a part of the exchange?
You do, you pay an annual fee to be in the exchange because there are
Mhm.
costs to administer it, and then you pay the price of the credits. And so the credits are actually worked out the year after the fact. So you're paying for the previous year's credits, which is why they want this 5-year guarantee, because we do the balance afterwards. So it's official. They know exactly how many pounds you need when you pay for them.
Agreeing to a price up front, not paying it for the following year?
They get the price, yeah. So
We're not a net buyer, though.
no,
a net
we're a
seller.
seller.
Just, in my mind, I'm thinking, there's like Virginia tax credits for conservation.
Yes.
There's also wetlands credits, which are permanent when we disturb wetlands. And so both of which work differently than this. And so
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why I'm,
Yeah, I'm with you.
okay.
But they do put a lot of faith in us and allowing it to do it after the fact. And it's because each year we show so many credits are available that we're like, don't worry, we're going to be good.
Yeah.
That will change over time, right? Again, as everybody starts using more and the credits available become smaller, that's why we also can't count on the exchange to operate in 2040
Right.
like it does now, right? It's not a permanent fixed thing.
So who are the current buyers?
I would say it's typically smaller utilities. There are industrial utilities that buy that just find it more cost effective to buy those credits than to expand their plants or put additional treatment processes in place to reach these lower limits, right? It is
Towns up river on
very
the Potomac?
expensive.
Not
Anywhere on the
Leesburg,
Potomac
but,
can, yeah.
I was thinking of some of the others. And then on the Maryland side, I don't even want to know what the limits are for Blue Plains. I don't want to know.
Right. And so, Maryland is administered completely differently than Virginia, since they gave each state the individual. So Maryland is a great case study because they have incentives. If they treat beyond a 3, they actually get a financial payback. So it is encouraging treatment plants to treat further instead of the enforcing it and then punishing you if you miss some like state of the art limit, right? It's like now you're disincentivizing me to even try because I might miss it once. Right, where Maryland took the encouraging approach.
So the nutrient trading is just nitrogen and just phosphorus.
Correct, because that is all that is covered under the Bay program.
Amazing where nitrogen
Building
is.
warming up.
That's
Cooling
the sun-
off.
The sun's heating the outside of the building, yeah.
But the other tool we have is really working to get that regulation amended. So the fact that there is no pathway to get more waste load allocation, they knew that when they first put this regulation in place, but there was only so much time to get it done and only so much they could tackle. So it was consciously, the can was kicked down the road. And so Loudon Water is really in the position now to lead the charge, to bring this back up and say, as a state, it is time to address a pathway for additional waste load allocation. It has come up for other people, and that is mostly people trying to do new treatment plants. So there was an industrial plant that tried to come online that really tried to challenge this, but it was solved with a permanent trade of credit. And so DEQ kind of got a pass. Okay, we don't have to address our regulatory issue. We're not going to. We are really the first people to bring this back up again as an urgent need to address the problem. We do not see a permanent transfer of the number of credits we need being viable. And we do believe that it is the state's responsibility to address this and provide a reasonable pathway here. It may not be the way we're proposing, but some way, because we have to accommodate economic growth, right? This is not us wanting to treat less, us not using state-of-the-art technology. It is truly trying to accommodate our growing community.
Yeah, so I'm beginning to understand that there's a real concern here as we continue to grow as a county, that we're going to exceed these limits. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, but not like tomorrow.
No,
So,
not like tomorrow, but
yeah.
in the 40 plan. Yeah.
you can see where it's almost, there's a feeling like
It's like it's
being
going,
in a growth area, it's almost, I wouldn't call it a penalty, but that's, I think, part of the narrative that we want to be able to talk to, that it shouldn't feel like that.
so we've been very good with our levels, and they want us to go even further, even though we're growing.
Are the other
Which-
large utilities in the Potomac watershed held to the same standard that we are?
So they are, but they don't need additional waste load allocation, right? So we have not found a great partner to date that is needing to, because we've already expanded our plant by 50%, and now we're looking at like another 100% from where our original waste load allocation. So they all had, a 40 MGD plant online that was using maybe 20 MGD of its capacity. So they're still within that waste load allocation they got when it was originally distributed. Unfortunately, Broad Run got 11 because that was the way the regulation was. You get the allocation for the capacity you have online now. And when this was doled out, we were only treating 4 MGD, but now we're using 8 of that 11,
Yeah.
right? We're the only one that went through that capacity that was there in 2010 that fast.
So if
Why
you go
we're
back to
building
that
more.
first slide where it shows how the allocation gets more efficient as you use
Mm-hmm.
more waste. Sounds these aren't being held to those levels because they were permitted long time ago to 40 MGD. So, okay.
Yes.
So they don't need the technology like we do.
Correct. Statewide, we're the only ones really below both of these limits, being asked to go below a 3 and a 0.18. There's some other utilities that go to the 0.1 like we do, but nobody has been asked to go to these two
Wow.
numbers yet,
Wow.
both.
So how about the one that runs the different counties that's south of us, that just does wastewater, that one, I'm trying, it's in.
Is that UOSA or the
Yeah.
Prince William
The
Service?
Prince William was one I was thinking about. And
Mhm.
is that in the Potomac shed or are they in the Rappahannock?
So they are under the same regulations as this. Their wastewater goes multiple places, right? So they send part of their flow to UOSA, part of their flow is treated at their Mooney plant. And so again, they do have a lot of growth, but it's being handled in plants that were sized a lot bigger and can still be addressed there.
One comment about that, Fairfax, Arlington, they have lost population, not huge, but there's a trend where they flatlined and have been reducing in population, where we've been continuing to grow, albeit a lot smaller at what we used to.
Yeah.
But so those are very different dynamics. They don't have the school issues that we've had. They've actually had registrations drop and so
Oh,
forth.
wait,
I don't know that we've had a drop in registration for schools.
2%. Okay.
Do we know the larger utilities what their equivalent TN and TP are right now?
The larger utilities, absolutely,
And
yeah.
what are they? Do you know off the top of your head?
So if we use, say, Fairfax County, right? So they are at the 3 and the 0.18. UOSA is going to be the only one that they are also at a 3, but they're at a 0.1 because they, like us,
What's
got
their flow?
the surface water
What's
augmentation.
Fairfax's flow?
Fairfax has a 40 MGD capacity,
They should be operating at that. There's 2 bottom numbers, but they're operating at.
but this is because of our waste load. So they were given their PN of 3 and 0.18 at 40 MGD, right? So it was whatever capacity you had online. So it's because
you're
of our
being
pounds.
penalized if
We're
you
all just
grow.
given a set amount of pounds based on the treatment capacity we had online. So they just got more pounds than we did. Yes, literally more. It wasn't, everybody didn't get an equal share. It was a consistent, waste load allocation.
Isn't it possible, I guess the answer is yes, but isn't it possible that there's new technology on the horizon that throws this whole thing out of whack?
So we do work on that every day, right? That is part of the long-term planning that we do for Broad Run. And we started this with the master plan in 2014 because we always knew this was coming. So that master plan said, well, what technologies are available to reach a 1.46 or a 0.036? This is not a question really anybody has tried to answer because it is so intensive. So right now, the only viable technology to achieve that is reverse osmosis. So we would take the highest level of drinking water treatment technology and have to put it at the end of our wastewater treatment plant to remove those last little levels of nutrients. Because it's a different type of nitrogen than we're even removing at a normal basis at this level. It's why we say there's limits to the technology, because the lower you get, you're trying to get to, organic nitrogen, which is this really small fraction and isn't normally concerning to anyone on its own. Reverse osmosis would be incredibly expensive, but generates a brine that we don't know how we would dispose of. Most people who use it discharge it to the ocean. So we wouldn't really have anywhere for the product of doing that treatment to get to. And yeah, so DEQ has looked at me and said, well, I know people are reaching a TN of 2. And yes, we can treat down to a TN of 2. Broad Run does it occasionally. But if they permit us at a 2, we then have to operate even lower than that to achieve permit compliance, right? It's impossible to say I'm going to be at a 2 every single day and be in compliance with my 2. So if they try to permit us there, we actually have to operate at a 1.5. And now our effluent can't vary very far around that 1.5, because right now 1.5 is low as we think we can theoretically go without that reverse osmosis technology. And the price of that technology would be astronomical. So that's where it gets to the reasonableness. So there is a technology there, but is this really where money, energy, resources should be invested to take one plant to such a low level when there is
When
a
the other
bigger
plants are
picture
not
to
doing
balance
that,
this, right? Broad Run reaching that is really not going to impact the health of the bay, which is the goal here, right? We're not, protecting human health or anything, right? It's the bay. And that's where we continue to look back to DEQ to say, what is a way that we can equalize these credits and get some moved around to accommodate economic growth and keep money used in the best possible way.
And so clearly amending regulations is the way to go. How long does Mike Rollband get to run the department over there? How long is that term appointment? Anybody know?
Well, it would be for the governor's term initially.
Is it
and
a
then
4-year
Yeah, and then,
initially? Somebody
the-
could appoint him again, but it's a 4-year term.
right, the guy that was in his role before him was there for many, 20 years or something
Okay,
like that.
but he's
So
at least
not-
there for 4.
Yes.
And we do think that the timing is
Yeah,
better
he's
than it
perfect.
has
He's-
been
he-
to
I
try
mean,
to get this done.
He's just so brilliant. He's forward thinking. He understands all this. He knows the area. He knows the region. I mean, what a perfect person to have there.
Yeah.
For a discussion like this. I mean, just
Mhm.
perfect.
But you have to get through the staff to get to them. So
Wow.
we know how to do that. I do have a question about the nitrogen.
Yes.
So you mentioned organic nitrogen. So sitting here, we're surrounded, the atmosphere is 80% plus or minus nitrogen.
Mhm.
So what kind of nitrogen are we talking about? Nitrogen compounds or free nitrogen?
So the permit is total nitrogen. And as the speciation of that, right, is broken into ammonia, and then a small, that comes into a wastewater treatment plant, that comes in as a small fraction of organic nitrogen. Most of what we focus on is dealing with the ammonia and particulate nitrogen. In the end, we convert that ammonia into nitrogen gas. We don't ever destroy nitrogen, but that's what we do. We go through a process that releases it into the air because it's no longer in the water. So the water can come out clean. That organic nitrogen is not part of that normal wastewater treatment process. We do remove some of it because we have the granular activated carbon, and that is absorbing some of the organic nitrogen, but it is not enough to get our total limit down to that anywhere below 1.5. And now that 1.5, it still has a tiny bit of ammonia, like 0.1 or 0.01 on some days, has a tiny bit of nitrate still left, but those add up real quickly into things that are 1 milligram per liter, because it is just such a low limit that you're having to hit every single type almost down to 0, which is always where things get impossible. But we are really glad that we made these efforts to start our regulatory work early. So our first conversations with this with DEQ were in 2020, where we wanted to make sure that they knew this was coming, that they had heard our issues, and we've met with them 3 times now in various forms to continue to talk about this, because it was a lot in our first meeting. So we continue to come back, talk to them again. Now, they're going through a lot of turnover and staffing changes, which are definitely challenging that conversation in the Northern Regional Office. We had some great relationships and they left, but really this is a central office problem, and our regional office is our ally to help us, with the central office. So in 2021, when they were renewing the general permit, we wanted to put our stake in the sand. So we said in that public forum, it's officially on the record, that was responded to by the State Water Control Board, Loudoun Water would like to amend this regulation. And we actually proposed a regulatory framework that would hold treatment plants accountable. It says, yes, we all have to be below state of the art. Yes, we all have to be using, every bit of capacity we have. We're not going to say that, oh, we could treat lower, but we're not going to right now. We're treating everything we can. But then we think the state should reallocate credits. We gave them a pathway to reallocate credits. And we did that by saying, let's move credits from all of the sheds, because the lower sheds do have a lot of credits available. And actually DEQ had already done this. So when we come to talk about the phase 3 WIP back in 2020, that was how DEQ balanced the phase 3. Was they made ratios so that we could move credits around in the sheds to balance that. We said, all right, if you can do it for the phase 3 and everything's still good for the bay, let's do this for plants that need relief in the economic development. So we showed them that if you move the credits around, there are plenty to address Broad Run's problem. And we are still treating beyond anybody else, doing our part, and we have a solution here that we think would work. The response we got back was, we absolutely acknowledge you have a really great problem. We don't think this is the place for you to talk about. We said, okay, thank you for responding to our comment, right? We got it on the record. We got them to say that this is important. But what they told us on the side was that they really want a state-supported option, right? They weren't comfortable with just a Loudoun Water proposed option. They wanted to know that this was going to be something that every utility wasn't going to line up and complain about, right? It makes sense. So this year, Mark helped us approach VAMWA and say, this is a problem. It applies to us. We think there are others in the state that this is going to apply to. We've started developing a framework. Will you consider this with us? Comment on it, help us build some consensus, because the process now that DEQ has requested is that they be petitioned to consider an amendment to the regulations specifically on this. So they were essentially indicating, don't wait till we renew the permit again. We have so many problems when we do that. We want to address this issue kind of on its own. But now we're in a position where we don't want to start that process until we know we've got the statewide consensus, because we'll be much more likely for success. Now, once we petition them though, DEQ has 30 days to decide whether they will consider it or not. So they could turn us down, and that could be done based on staffing issues. But again, we are on the record with saying, this is important. DEQ needs to address this. And that's where having the support from the legislature and the right people in the state government will help us, get the yes out of DEQ that we need to consider this. And then it is a 1 to 2 year rulemaking process to get this notification.
With the petition, what's critical mass in order for us to get the petition out? How many other utilities need to buy into this? What's critical mass look like?
It's really an endorsement from VAMWA, the organization.
Okay, we just needed an endorsement from them. And what's the process for getting that? Do they have a board of directors or something?
They do have a
and
board of
I'm now on
directors.
the board.
Yeah.
And so that was where it started, to be able to have that conversation. And, I think there's some work. I think there's but we really think there's a good case to be made that it's helpful for the industry to support this, because if you can imagine, if if we have to sort of, put in the technology to meet these, and sort of, it almost proves that you can, regardless of how much you spend, it sets kind of the standard of what over time, over a long period of time, everybody starts to be asked to do. And so there's reason, I think. So, it was, but through that work with the board of directors, who then, that association, is across the state. And there's great leadership there, there's a great resource there who's very connected, in Richmond and all of that. So, we think there's a good pathway here.
Do we have any sense of how the larger utilities stand on this issue? Are they supportive of us? Are they skeptical of it?
So the one thing everybody's going to be concerned about is their credits.
Right.
They want to know we're not coming for their credits. That's why we're trying to make it clear we're going for the excess credits that nobody's using. We're not coming for your credits. But there is an option for that. So within the regulations, in 2030, DEQ opens up and evaluates the credits. They actually just went through this process with the industrial point source dischargers, and they looked at people and said, your capacity has decreased, or you went offline, you have credits you're not using, so we're going to take them back. So 2030 is the time that DEQ gets to do that with the municipal dischargers. And nobody knows how that's going to go, right? It's really up to what the situation looks like at the time. And that's what they're going to be concerned about in fully supporting this effort. But again, if we can get ahead of that and already have this process, then maybe there's less attack on their credits when the 2030 reevaluation comes up.
So there's going to be two components to that, it would seem. One is how many people do you currently serve? And then a forward-looking view, what's the growth look like? And of course, every county has some growth projections. Nobody's saying, well, 10 years from now, we're going to be even smaller. No, nobody, even if that is going to be the case. But so it seems that those are going to be the two primary drivers. Is that accurate? Yeah.
But again, DEQ doesn't just let you put out a projection.
Sure.
They look at what you're ready to construct. So it's the certificate to construct is what everybody's going to have to show for their used allocation. So we wouldn't have to have it online.
Okay.
But we would need our CTC in place to say, yes, this is real.
So, next slide.
Next slide is the timeline here. And that is what's important is our CTC for phase 3 is our deadline, right? This is where to get that certificate to construct phase 3 approved, DEQ is going to want to know how you're going to manage your waste load allocation. So we believe that big CTC right now is probably going to be in 2025, 2026 years. This will move around. It's not a hard deadline. So but we're really in a 3-year window to get this movement made. Again, this still frustrates DEQ a little bit because we're not using our credits. So I wanted to point out, and it's underneath that box, but
Okay.
2040 is really when I think our discharge is going to reach the level that we can't reach those concentrations anymore with our technologies. So
Why don't we apply for the volumes we need in 2040?
Because we need to construct it 10 years in advance, right?
Construction can go
Do we
really
really think our
slow.
growth is going to be, I guess, that much in 2040? It seems to be slowing already.
Exactly. We need the capacity online, but that is not the same as needing those pounds for allocation. So this is just another pathway is for them to accept a not so sure nutrient offset plan. Now, they would have to accept our guarantee that if we ever reached this problem in 2040, we would solve it then. We think it's a problem we can kick down the road. One person in specific in DEQ has indicated that he doesn't think that is acceptable, but those type of minds I think are easy to change, particularly when pressures start coming on, right? So there's a lot of solutions to this problem, but really our timeline is that CTC and getting the guarantee that we can construct the capacity that we need online so that we're in a better position. And the reason why we need to build so far ahead from 2040, we can't get out of this planning, design, constructing, right? We're planning again before we've even finished constructing. So we need a break, right? So we want to build a little bigger here Because otherwise, if we do a real small increment, then by the time we're even getting this online, now we're building for 2040 again, right? It just
Yeah.
won't stop.
No, this is the right approach. I mean, we got to get out in front of it.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's where I've also marked that 2030 is just another backstop when those allocations are ready to shift.
It's 7.5 years.
2030 sounds like, you know, some science fiction.
It's 7.5 years.
It will be
Right.
here soon.
Yeah.
I know,
Yes.
it'll be here, like,
So this was the end of my slides.
Well, this is a good slide. This is really good. And I know you're keeping an eye on other technologies to help get the nitrogen out. Nitrogen is a rather interesting molecule.
It is, and that the planning phase that we're doing right now for phase 3, it will include an option for what we do when we get there. So it's not something that we're planning to build now, but we're Loudon Water, we're prepared, right? So we're going to know what that option is if we get there and we have to pull the trigger on it.
Mr. Kobus has a question.
Please.
Hi, Kendra. About, I don't know, it was 8 or 9 years ago when we were doing the first reclaim water, there was some issue where we had a limit of reclaimed water because of nitrogen. Can you explain that to me again? I forget. We couldn't make enough reclaimed water or something like that due to nitrogen. Do you know anything? Do you remember anything about that?
So I'm not sure of a nitrogen limit, but we do have a permit limit right now on how much reclaimed water that we can actually offer, right? So we are permitted, we think we cannot provide more than 11 MGD of reclaimed water. So as we expand Broad Run, we will also work to expand that reclaim permit as well, which is not as easy as you would think. So this will be another water resources challenge for us to try to get that number moving so that we can maximize the use of that reclaim system. And I do want to come back to talk to water resources at some point about where we are with reclaimed water, again, because it's that summer peak that is limiting us. We do at times provide 7 MGD, which is almost as much as we have coming in of reclaimed water on an instantaneous basis. It's when it's really hot, right?
it's all days.
Majority, yeah. There's some irrigation uses, but that is not the
And
Do you have a
that's really where
question?
we,
What- I'm sorry.
that's where we really start to blur the lines into water supply, right?
Mhm,
Limits like
exactly.
that are what then you start to look at, okay, well, what are we really taking away from the environment at that point?
And that is the resistance to people of DEQ approving the expansion of that permit is now we get into the Potomac and how much water is then left for everybody who wants to take out. So they're kind of speaking out of both sides of their mouth at us. They're saying they don't want our water because of the nitrogen and phosphorus, and then they're saying they do want it because it's part of the water supply.
Leesburg has the same issue because they've committed to certain amounts of reclaimed water to Panda. So they, we're not the only one with that's running into that.
Absolutely, the water
Yeah.
supply problem.
Water
Yes.
supply. But I do have a question for you.
Okay.
I really appreciate your presentation, and this is really the kind of thing that this committee likes to know about and investigate. Now, the question is, what can we do as a board to help?
I do think the support there is going to come when we're reaching out publicly, right? And trying to get, this work approved. But I think that's something that we can follow up on, right? On
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
specific support we're looking for there.
I wanted to add as well, I think this really highlights, one small piece, but an important piece of the phase 3 work, which, as you know, went underway last fall. And there is a lot of thought going into this. And I believe the plan is, we'll be back with action items in the fall
Yeah.
that support the continued progress on the phase 3 planning and even moving toward design. So, thank you.
Need to stay focused on that.
Yes, and we are running on that one as fast as we can.
Well, I think that's all really, we had the chamber breakfast, a week ago. We had the guy, Jason, whatever his name is, from the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. And, he was just reiterating how important Loudoun County is to the Commonwealth. We've got Dulles Airport here. National can't be expanded at all. So Dulles is a really important piece of the for the Commonwealth and for Loudoun, of course. Just as things continue to unfold, they have a lot of hopes for Loudoun. And so at least as everybody struggles through decision makers, what does Loudon do and build and attract and all this stuff, at least water and sewer shouldn't be a limiter. And so we go, we have the capacity, you guys decide, you guys figure all that stuff out, but we're ready. Whenever you want us to do something, we're ready. And that is our job. And I think we've done a great job with that. But this focus continues in that. I think it's really important. So great job.
Our attorneys, we're in the middle of changing attorneys, but that organization that they're a part of does lobby in this area and has a lot of knowledge. So I suspect we're already using them to some extent, but it's worth keeping in mind.
Yeah, and I would make a comment that our new general counsel has been very involved in much of this and brings some real, yep,
Waters?
yes.
Yes. That is, it's going to be hard not to smirk with that name every time.
I'm on the phone too.
It's just great.
You can see what it's like when they introduce her to present at a water.
It's just like it's out of a story, out of a novel or something, You're general counsel, Mrs. Waters,
Yes.
Perfect. Good.
Oh, she is. Oh, I didn't see.
I am here, yes.
Your name is, you were made for this job.
I was born to do this work, yes.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Looking
Good morning.
forward to meeting you in person.
Yes.
Yes, me too.
Next meeting. And I'm sure this session was of a lot of interest to you.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Yeah,
So-
thank you.
Thank you.
We have our next presentation and discussion. That we like to discuss, right? So is hydrant flushing was item B. Is that where we want to go?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
I'll have a little more of a lighthearted presentation for you, which I think is a pretty fun one. So I'm going to share some information about our hydrant flushing program. This is one of the most fundamental preventive maintenance programs that any water utility would have, and just the most common type of program out there. But there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about this program. So when most people think about water hydrants, they think about fire suppression, which is absolutely one of the most important uses of hydrants. But there are a lot of other reasons that these hydrants exist as well, and a lot of that has to do with our water quality. So as we're going through the flushing process every year, we are removing sediment from the line and testing the water quality as well. So this is a really important process for the quality, as well as ensuring that we've got the right amount of flow and water pressure to support not only fire suppression, but also our customers' needs and having the service that they need for their homes and businesses. Favorite things to do every year is to find Scott on my street flushing my hydrant. And this was something I was able to discover in person over COVID, which was kind of a bonus, is being able to kind of chase the trucks down the street and see what's going on. It's kind of like the ice cream truck coming for kids, but it's, for me, it's the Loudon water truck, and I get a lot of excitement there. So Scott's here flushing the hydrant, which is really fun. And if you haven't seen this done in person, definitely chase them down if you see them. It is a lot of water, but it's for a good purpose. So this video was really to give you an idea of what the hydrant flushing process looks like. So there's a number of different steps that are really important when they're doing the flushing. The first thing they're going to do before they even open the hydrant is they're going to inspect it for any visual defects, making sure the bolts are secure and in good condition. If it needs to be painted or any other just signs of obvious damage to the hydrant, they're going to inspect that and report any problems they may see. They're also, as they're opening it, they're going to lubricate all of the threads. This is going to This is really important because if there is an emergency fire suppression need, for example, that we want this to open and close easily and have the access that we need to the hydrant. Then they're gonna open the hydrant and let the water flow, and this is the fun part. So after a few minutes of flushing, they're going to take a look at the water flow and see if there's sediment in the line. So one of the purposes is to get that sediment out of the line, make it clear. And if they see sediment, they're gonna continue to flush a little bit longer, and any extreme amounts that won't go away would be reported and investigated further. Also, while that water's flowing, they're gonna use test strips to measure the level of chlorine in the water, make sure we've got adequate amount of disinfection for the line. So they're gonna do that water quality test, make sure that's where it should be. And then finally, once all of the checks have been completed, they're gonna close the hydrant. And very important step here is to check and make sure the hydrant's not leaking. We don't want any leaks going on in the hydrant. If there are any leaks or any other problems that are found, they're gonna put in notifications to have that maintenance taken care of. If there's anything that would render the hydrant to be inoperable, they have bags they would place over the hydrant, label them out of service, contact the fire department immediately so that they have knowledge of what's going on. And then these repairs would be made really quickly.
Jessica, is the sediment, is it just a visual identification? Okay,
Yeah.
that's all they're doing there.
Mhm.
Let me understand when we said ensure adequate flow and pressure. I'm assuming that we have a sense of, I mean, we've got our zones with the water pressure and stuff. Is this just a feedback loop to ensure that the pressure we think is in the line is in the line? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, and it's another visual too. I mean, it's really, the team is so just well trained in knowing, like, if this is not flowing out as fast as it should be, they know that they're not getting the right amount of pressure.
Okay, but we're not actually putting a gauge on the hydrant and going, okay, we've got so many pounds per square inch or something like this.
Mr. Campbell, maybe I'll add, that's a great question. Probably an example of what could take place here is, with all the development in the system, every once in a while, a valve will remain closed when something's being isolated for a construction project. And it's through this process that we're actually getting, boots on the ground to find an issue like that, where if it's not flowing as kind of shown here, we might speculate, okay, there could be a closed valve somewhere in this vicinity. Probably a great example of what this does for us.
Okay, so it's just confirming that when you open up the fire hydrant, the thing shoots out water and somebody didn't shut a valve off accidentally somewhere upstream.
Correct.
Okay.
Every year we verify that.
Every year. Yeah, every hydrant, every year.
Every hydrant.
Every hydrant.
Yeah.
every year.
So what about the special water flow to, let's say, schools? High schools have a very high requirement for water flow, and so the middle schools. Do we test those every year also?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think that's tested. I know we do
May
have,
not be our.
we have pressure gauges, so if there were concerns and we needed to go out and take a look at that, we could do that testing.
Presumably, when you open the tap, I mean, if the water's, trickling out, you go, all right, we got a problem, but I don't know. Sometimes I look at these low flow, you go to a restaurant, and the things like dribble, 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 and you're like, oh, well, it's designed for that. I'm thinking,
That's right.
thinking they've got a pressure problem.
Their
Yeah,
pressure,
exactly.
their pressure
Miss-
going into most buildings is 120. Step down.
And Mr. Bonfils, I think your question's somewhat related to the example I gave. I think this is really a maximizing the testing, right? You're really simulating fire flow here. So whereas in this street that Jessica has illustrated here, when everyone's using their household demands, you won't see that level of demand on the system. So if through opening all 14,000 hydrants a year through this process, we're able to really see, are there any problems with these peak demands in these areas? So it's very helpful to the overall process.
He was actually flowing this a little faster than normal because in this instance, he thought there could have been a leak. So he wanted to really push the water out. So it was a little bit more exciting. But then there wasn't a leak. So all was well and it worked out. But
They can put out a lot of water.
yeah, so that one was a little bit more because they were trying to figure out if there was an issue with the hydrant. And that process takes about 15 minutes on average from the time they pull up in the truck to the time they leave and move on to the next hydrant. So that was really the fun part with what it looks like. But I do want to share that we've got a lot of great tools behind the scenes that help us when we're not there in the field to understand how the program's working and to plan our resources and so on. So we've got some great technology to support us. Our preventive and corrective maintenance activities are all stored in SAP. And now thanks to Power BI, we've got the ability to take a look at that data more easily and really get good visual information a lot more quickly than we have in the past. The point of this report here that I'm showing is the majority of the corrective work repairs that are identified on hydrants are identified during the spring season during hydrant flushing, which is another really important reason why we have this program. We have eyes on almost 14,000 hydrants per year that we are out flushing. So we have the prime opportunity to find problems and correct them immediately. So you kind of see the increase in corrective maintenance kind of starts in the spring, and then also there's more repairs being made into the summer. The ones that would be pushed off longer would be like hydrant painting types activities that aren't really critical to the function, but we want to keep them looking.
What do we do in the community systems where they have hydrants, 10,000 gallons of that? Do we flush those every year?
Those get flushed every year as well.
And then they refill the flushed out?
That's a question I'd have to.
Maybe they have to. Maybe they bring a tanker truck in and flush it. That would be fire department doing that, water. Right?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to do that.
Because I have
Yeah.
one on my street. I mean, 10,000 gallons goes like that.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Mr. Allen, I didn't quite catch the question there.
So the dry hydrants that are in the community systems that aren't hooked up to the central,
Mhm.
are they flushed every year? And if they are flushed, I'm assuming that they have to be refilled.
I believe so, and I think those dry hydrants actually fall under the purview of the county. So those are
Right,
sort
Fire
of
department.
Yeah.
mandated by the county's facility standards, development standards,
Okay.
not loud and water standards. And so I believe that would fall with the county sort of general services, fire and rescue. Sort
Because
of,
that's who I see come down the street as a fire truck, but,
yeah, I think
Because it's not hooked up to the central system, is what you're
Right,
saying.
correct,
Okay.
yeah.
but
It's a
I
great
mean,
question.
our water, you guys manage the water, so in the community. So it seems like a gray area. I'm not,
Yeah, a lot of times those are associated with buried tanks and
Right.
in ponds and so forth. So in terms of the refill of those, I'm not quite sure the process for that of where they're getting the
Okay.
water to refill those. Great question.
When I started in the water industry, the engineers, new engineers worked on a crew. And, we tapped water mains and all, and we flushed hydrants. And this particular day, the crew chief told me to go to that hydrant and open it up. What he didn't tell me was, you're supposed to crank it slowly. So I went to the hydrant, I went like this, and he's going, no. I disturbed sediment probably for a mile around in the community that had dirty
were
water.
you standing on the correct side?
I was hoping that, but I definitely caused a problem.
Righty tighty, lefty loosey.
Mr. Sultan, I kind of have a similar story that relates to a question Mr. Campbell asked about checking the sediment in the water. I was out with the guys and, all ready to get out of the truck, and I see him grab a styrofoam cup, a white styrofoam cup, and that's really the tool to take a look at the sample to see, you can see the contrast of the sediment in the water, and I thought that was really neat.
Sophisticated.
So another technology tool we have is this dashboard that helps us to track the progress of flushing, which is really, really helpful to what we're trying to accomplish. So I mentioned we have nearly 14,000 fire hydrants that need to be flushed every single year. We also have a tight time frame that we need to adhere to. So we've got a 12-week schedule, and that is because there is a change in chemicals, and we need to coordinate with Fairfax Water as well as with our own water treatment to make sure that we're staying within that window during the hydrant flushing. That's really important. So this dashboard allows us to check on an updated progress report daily of how we're doing. Are we meeting our goals? Do we have enough staff that are on top of this program? Do we need to bring in more, et cetera, to make sure that that happens? This is really helpful for us, not only as the program's going on, but as we're planning future years, making sure we have the right resources allocated and that our plan is solid and we can accomplish our goals. And we were able to get this done a little ahead of schedule this year, and it was pretty exciting, and it was a lot of fun to be able to watch our progress every day move up and even have little internal contests to see who could flush the most hydrants. So we've got some we've got some top flushers. We even have another one that shows the all-time high, over all the years, who's the top. So it's pretty prestigious award and just a fun way to get excited.
Is this kept in SAP?
Mhm. This is SAP, and
Forever.
but this is
Forever.
forever. And our data, is from 2014 in terms of being able to track more specifically when SAP went live. But it's really great. And then this is Power BI here, and we can look back on historical years and get information.
Jessica, is this a standard off-the-shelf product, or was this made for us specifically?
Made by our Loud and Water staff. Yes.
Coded and everything?
Mhm.
We have coders?
Well, this
Yeah.
is
I don't know what you want to call it. But
using a template built into SAP.
Okay.
yeah, so they're pulling data from SAP.
Yeah.
And that is going into Power BI, just business intelligence. And our teams have pulled that data from the different tables to develop the dashboard. So, we basically handed our business solutions team a paper. This is what we'd like to see. And they just made it happen with magic.
So obviously this is a fantastic tool, and I'm just, you got Fairfax, you got all these other counties, and I'm going, are they also able to, but they would have to create this for their own system. This isn't an off-the-shelf piece of software that can be tweaked. They'd have to start from scratch.
Depending on your definition of the business intelligence suite is there, and then you as a user, the business group would put that together based on the user's requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very flexible system. It's not coding in terms of doing ones and zeros and C++.
Yeah.
But it is some people might refer to coding, but it is business intelligence
Probably like
creation.
WordPress or something like that.
Well, it could be. It'd be
Well,
like that,
we have programmers who are.
yeah, programming is what it would be more like, yeah.
Right.
Rather than coders.
We have a lot more than this.
Oh, I bet.
They have come up with an
Yeah.
amazing amount of
Oh.
content over the past.
Well, and you have
years.
so much
Yeah.
data that you can slice it in a lot of different ways.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mr. Campbell, I wanted to mention, because I think this exemplifies, this was a vision that we had for SAP, we implemented. And this is the culmination of a lot of work, but we've built this internal team, Business Solutions, that really helps bridge the gap with the business and needs like this that arise. And, through tools like Power BI, we really do, fully in-house build these types of dashboards now. So we have the expertise on staff, and it's just been incredible. I mean, we're just able to put this stuff at our fingertips within a few days' time. And just leveraging the data that goes right into SAP. The guys in the field are real time entering this with our mobile work order management system. It's a great story to tell, and it's very helpful to the business.
It is. It's really getting the value out of the investment in SAP.
Absolutely. It took a little bit of time, but it's paying dividends.
So we have a business solutions team, like a department of sorts. Well,
Correct.
and that's different from like what Michael's doing, or.
But they work
Yeah, 'cause
hand
you're
in
more
hand,
IT,
but yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, both groups are sort of within the technology services group under Mike Beardsley, but yeah, they're sort of two sort of distinct type of groups.
And it's quite a skill set because it's bridging the business, in this case, the field staff and information technology, and they really help, speak the languages and convert into, great tools like you see.
We have, what you're saying is we have the technical expertise, the programming
Mhm.
in-house so that we can translate, okay, we'd like all this stuff, make it work in the software, and we have guys in-house that can do that.
Yeah.
Since
Well,
they
and-
want to ask for something.
No,
Well, and
it's, that's, so many people outsource that.
Yeah.
And then there's friction in that process, because you're going, I want this to show up on my screen, and what you get back doesn't do that. And having it in-house really is very helpful.
And we encountered that struggle in the early years of
I bet you
SDP.
did.
And then we evolved to what we have in-house today, and I've seen it through and it's been incredible.
No, these-
Yeah, it's night and day when you
dashboards
have that.
are great, and they're flexible. You can change things when you want to look at something different. And
Message
They
can get
can-
us a fix that we need right away.
Yeah,
without,
that's big.
they even,
contract, which is nice.
they even know if you haven't turned your water, you have stopped having water flow to your house within a few hours. They already know.
Yeah, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
that's
they can
helpful.
tell you.
Jessica, one other quick, on what's the TECOD work orders, TECO, what's that?
SAP term.
Okay.
That just means technically complete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I try to go,
Probably
okay,
use a
what's
relabel.
that little
We all
acronym
learned
mean?
to-
Everybody
Okay.
has acronyms, and
I know.
I'm part of the acronym police too. So,
Thank you,
SAPs are challenging, but
thank
yeah,
you,
TECO means it's complete.
thank you.
So there's more technology helping us out here.
Yeah.
So we also have a map. I don't know if you've seen this before on our website. We have a customer facing map where anyone in the community that's curious about what's going on with hydrant flushing can go and see the status of it. So anything in green is complete, blue is we haven't been there just yet, and red means that our crews are actively there. So this is a great resource if people have questions. Also great for our customer relations team to field questions that may come in through phone calls to quickly be able to identify where our teams are. So also on the website, we keep frequently asked questions out there. I would say these are definitely the most common ones that you hear about, that our crews get when they're out in the field, that I see on social media when people say, does your water smell like chlorine today? There's always, something going on. So this really addresses the questions that are out there. Just in case you're unaware of any of these answers, will flushing affect my water? No, is the simple answer. If there's a team that's out on your street, you could have like a minor blip in pressure fluctuation, but super temporary and doesn't affect anything that you're doing. The chlorine odor and taste, some people are more sensitive to that than others, but we do change the chemicals from chloramines to free chlorine during the flushing season, both us and Fairfax Water. It just has a stronger smell and taste that's less desirable, but it's perfectly safe and a temporary measure to make sure that the pipes are disinfected during the process. Sometimes you could have some air bubbles in your water if there's flushing going on and the water's all mixed up in your street. But that's super temporary as well, perfectly safe, nothing to be concerned about. And the cost of the water that's being flushed is built into our normal operations and user fees, so you won't get an extra bill when all that water's pouring out on the street.
So the answer to that one is you pay 80,000 of the.
Yes, but you will
Whatever
not
it
see
costs.
an increase in your water bill that quarter because of flushing. And so, we're flushing in the spring, which is great, but our hydrants actually have a lot more going on with them than maybe you would think about. So year round, we've got some other activities, one of them being predictive maintenance. So this is a newer program that we've gotten rolling kind of in the past year, is acoustic monitoring. And in some of our areas of the system that are older and more prone to leaks and breaks, we have these devices that are on hydrants that can remotely detect potential leaks in the system, and it can correlate those down to within like a few feet of where the leak is taking place. And this has been super exciting and successful for
How
us.
does it do that?
Acoustic transducers? Using acoustic transducers in the pipeline?
Nope, it's an acoustic monitoring device that is on each hydrant.
Mhm.
And not super techy. I'm not sure how it works, but it can correlate listening to sound where on the pipe by taking a measurement from this hydrant and a measurement from this hydrant and where they detect that sound, it can correlate where it is. And then we get notified, immediately, basically like, hey, there's a potential leak in this area. So our team can go, they can listen to it with they have some manual listening devices they can do in the field before you start
On the surface
to
before they
dig.
Yeah.
Yeah, and verify the leak and make the corrections. And we're able to find leaks super early before the customers even know that there's a problem, which is fantastic. We can take care of that issue super fast.
But it only does the main lines between the hydrants. It won't sense a leak, I guess, service line.
We've had that happen.
From your meter? It'll
Yeah.
show it? Oh,
Yeah,
really?
we've had that happen where it's kind of like funky, and then you find out when you go out in the field that, oh, that's coming from
From
the service line. Yeah.
They used to do this leak detection on pre-stressed concrete pipe. They could tell, and it was adapted from the Navy, and that they could tell when the wires are cracking or breaking, and they could tell where it is. This must be the same.
Same.
I got a
using
feeling it's the
technology.
same technology.
Maybe, yeah.
Uh,
There's a lot of different acoustic monitoring technologies out there, and we tried a couple, kind of piloting it, and this one seems to be the most effective and the best at.
I'm really excited that you used. Great.
Is there a portable application? If we suspect that there's a leak in this general vicinity, are we able to take one of these devices and point it there? Or is it just a fixed?
That one is fixed, but we do have portable devices that we can take. So if we suspect, we can
We're digging.
follow the
Yeah.
pipe, and it's a much longer process.
Yeah, Mr. Campbell, I think that's what Jessica was describing, and it's been within the last year or two that we've, started to pilot these real-time, always on, always listening sensors in these older parts of the system. But in most cases, I think we go out and seek to verify what we're finding from that system. That's when we're using that portable technology that we've had for a long, long time. And we've actually had, a long-standing contract with a vendor that, does the more portable fashion acoustic monitoring throughout the system, both for existing portions of our system and as part of acceptance of new development into the system. We take a look at take a listen to those new water mains before we accept, and take over those lines from developers. But this has been interesting, right? Because those are just snapshots in time versus this always on system. And, what that really translates to, I think what we've seen is, discovery of a lot of things before they become bigger issues and become after hours, middle of the night, overtime type scenarios, emergency scenarios. And so I think that really over time, as we, really gain some confidence in the system, it translates to real savings for the authority.
Is that normal that a lot of utilities have these acoustic portable systems? Is that so everybody has that?
Mm-hmm.
When I was on the town council in Hamilton on the sewer committee and we'd have problems, we were going out there looking around on the ground for, water coming up. Maybe that's just Hamilton.
I think so.
I didn't know that was even available as a thing. So that's cool.
Lots of options.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, we've also got, corrective maintenance happening year round. Unfortunately, a lot of accidents and hydrants get knocked over and we'll have to go out and make repairs. Or like Alton was saying, we've got a relationship with a contractor that goes out and does listening throughout the year. And one of the things they're doing is checking for hydrant leaks. So when those get detected, we would go out and make those repairs as well. Fire suppression, when we all know about development community support. So we were talking about the water pressures. So when new development occurs, we do hydrant flow testing in the area and check the pressure and make sure there's adequate pressure and flow for that community before it is finalized. So we do use the hydrants for that purpose. And we also have a construction water supply program where contractors can rent meters and have designated hydrants where they can go and get water for construction purposes, and they basically get billed based on what's metered by our meters. So that's all I have on the hydrant flushing presentation. I have a couple just fun pics of some of our team members that are out there every day working hard on hydrant flushing. We did a little ice cream party celebration once we finished this year. But really, these guys are so helpful and so willing to talk to you and answer your questions. If you see them, say thank you, you know, and ask them any questions you want. They love to talk about what they do. They're really proud of the work they do, and they're really great at it. Very knowledgeable. No one's more knowledgeable than these guys that are out there every day. So definitely take time to say thank you if you see them and say hi. They're a great
Yeah,
team.
we will. Thank you very much. It's a
You're
very good
welcome.
presentation. Created a lot of discussion.
So we're done flushing for the year?
Yes.
Oh, wow. And it's not
Yeah,
even July.
June 10th, I think, is when we finished. Yeah.
June 10th. Is that normal for us? We're done.
Yeah, we finished like a couple days ahead of schedule.
Okay.
But that was our
We're
normal.
normally done mid-June, something like that. Okay.
Yeah, get ready for the next big program.
That's great.
So,
Thank you very much.
You're
for the
welcome.
presentation.
all right, back to regulations. So I have another one to share, an informational item with you guys, and this is going to be kind of high level, just to introduce you to what's coming. And that is the EPA's lead and copper rule revisions. So this was released back in 2021, and I'm going to share with you kind of what this is and what it means for Loudon Water in the community. And I'd like to kind of start with this graphic before we get into the regulations themselves. And I want to highlight as we're going through this graphic and just kind of ease any concerns, Loudon Water's water distribution system is 100% lead free. So we're in a really good place with this rule, but that doesn't mean the rule doesn't affect us in some activities that we're going to need to do here. So as water service line, which is really the focus of the lead and copper rule revisions, it's all about getting rid of lead in water service lines, is the pipe that runs from the public water main to the premise, whether that be a house, a school, a business, what have you. That's the water service line. From kind of the water utilities perspective, there are two halves of a water service line. The first half is the one from the public water main to, in most cases, the water meter. That is owned and maintained by Loudon Water. That we know is all non-lead pipe materials. We've never allowed that in the system since we came. Now, the second half of that service line is privately owned. So this is your homeowner, property owner, whoever. This is the part of the service line that they're responsible for maintaining. If it breaks in their yard, they go out, they take care of fixing it and all of that. So that is the second side of the service line. That is the part where we have not had authority over what kind of pipe material. That's not driven by Loudon Water. So when we have EPA's lead and copper rule revisions, they are looking at the entire service line, not just Loudon Water's portion of the service line. So we're thinking about all the way to the premise, including the privately owned portion. That's just important to keep in mind.
So how are we gonna know that?
We'll get into that. We're working on it. We've got some ideas.
So it's-
So I'm not going to go into huge detail here, but just a little history on lead pipe. A few things I'll point out. The Safe Drinking Water Act was amended in 1986. This was a big date. This is when federal law banned lead in the drinking water. So lead was banned 1986. Virginia follows the U.S. Building Code or Plumbing Code, and that code was updated in 1990 to say the maximum amount of lead content in pipe is 8%. So it's pretty safe to say that anything that was built between 1986 or after 1986 is not lead, but after 1990 is a much it's more, a conservative date to say if it's built after 1990, it probably doesn't have lead because of these rules in the building code that was put in place. In 2021 was when the lead and copper rule revisions were released, and this was really focus on lead service lines, getting lead out of pipe. And our compliance deadline with the requirements I'll share is October 16th, 2023.
Jessica, pipe would have 8% lead. Why have any lead? In 1990, we knew lead was a problem.
Could be the
Honestly,
solder joints.
Is that,
I think there's
Tin
lead
lead
in solder.
solder, people were,
Yeah, I wanted to get rid of
they
that.
had to switch over to the new solder, the new fluxes.
so you think that's what that's account that?
I'm assuming that's what-
we're guessing. We don't know
And
for
and
sure.
I think in cases, fixtures, the brass and the different materials and the production of those materials, I think that's just part of the material science that,
And you're still finding in the schools, the drinking fountains, the old drinking fountains, that when they test the water, they get trace lead
Mhm.
because of the old solder that was in that cooling system.
Yeah.
They just need to rip it out, put another one in.
The internal plumbing fixtures
Yep.
are a whole other
Yeah.
issue.
Oh, yeah.
So this 1990 ruling, when it says all water pipes, we don't, there's no pipe material that we're aware of that has lead in it that was being used in 1990
Or since.
or since.
Yeah.
So really, it would just be the solder that's being used
In the copper,
in-
on the copper.
on the copper to join up the pipes. Okay, great. Yeah, because I wasn't aware of any pipe
No.
either. I was thinking, what kind of pipe had lead in it in 1990?
And there's still some galvanized pipe used, but
So it's also important to point out that this regulation is affecting the whole nation. It's not a Loudon Water specific issue. So this graphic from American Water Works Association shows that there's approximately, they're guessing 6.1 million lead service lines still in use in the United States. This is just interesting to show. Virginia is definitely on the lower end of that. We expect Loudoun County to be hopefully none. We think none, but there's always that possibility, but we're definitely much lower end of that. And I highlighted Flint, Michigan, because I think when most people think of lead in drinking water, that's really what comes to mind is that water crisis from 2014, I believe it was. And I think that was probably one of the main drivers that got this lead and copper rule revisions moving forward is that.
I was laughing at your
Right.
graphic there because one of my relatives was at school up in Flint and I visited him.
Mhm.
And so there was lots of jokes about Flint and then you're right, it has kind of become the poster child for.
But it's truly amazing about the service ones that were led. When I was a kid in DC Water was going around and, the homeowners had to pay a fee, but they went in with coppered coil pipe that they went through the lead pipe and they run a string through it and they pulled it through and replaced your water line. That was in the 60s. We've known this for so long.
Mhm.
It's very frustrating, and of course, the service line is the homeowner's responsibility. That's, I guess, been part of the
Challenge.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
the challenge.
Isn't there the potential that I know Leesburg's not really our responsibility per se, it's not, but we do interact with them. That's a much older system. Is there any reason to believe that Leesburg has a much higher level of lead in their water? Are we aware of their testing? I know that's not our system, but
We're
Yeah, I think
working
we've-
with them.
Yeah.
oh, we are.
Yeah.
Just collaborating and
Mhm.
because every utility has to go through this process, you guys have been collaborating with them.
Yeah, we've been collaborating with Leesburg quite a lot, and they're kind of following our lead on the process here. But we are putting together a group of all the towns and Loudoun County to work together and kind of have a like path forward. So
Okay.
that's something that's in the works.
So that's in the works. So we don't know yet. Leesburg's obviously the biggest town by far and
Yeah, they
we
haven't
don't.
indicated to me that they feel that they have a big problem, but they know that they're a higher risk than we are because of the age, so.
Well, and the age of the homes.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, all-
That's
All
right.
of the homes
Yeah.
were old solid copper pipes with tin lead solder.
There are kind of three high-level goals of the lead and copper rule revisions. The number one being to protect children, schools and childcare facilities. The research has shown that lead in drinking water is most harmful to that population. So there's going to be increased testing that will take place, increased frequency and levels of testing at early childhood centers and elementary schools in particular as part of this rule. The second goal is to just simply get the lead out of our nation's drinking water, emphasizing replacing the lead service lines that do exist and improving our testing. So we're moving from a 1 liter sampling or first liter sampling to 5th liter sampling to test for lead in the drinking water. And this basically, instead of targeting, the first liter targets the premise plumbing looking for lead, the 5th liter is looking at the entire service line and a better detector. So that's going to be one of the changes that'll take place as part of this rule. And then the final goal is to empower our communities with more information. They're going to have a whole lot more information at their fingertips than they've had before. Service line inventories of what service line materials they have is going to be publicly available. We're going to have more information published to explain where lead comes from, what are the harmful effects, how can you protect your family, and so on. So a lot more information is going to be distributed to the community as part of our requirements, and then just in general what EPA is trying to do as part of this rule. So the specific requirements that will affect all utilities, including land and water. The first and foremost that we're making a lot of progress on already is our publicly facing service line inventory. So customers are going to need to be able to come to our website and say, what is my service line material on the private side and the public side? We already have wiped out all of Loudon Water side because we know that's 100% non-lead. 84% of our customers, the properties were developed after 1990. So that only leaves us a 14% that we need to figure out. Now, part of this requirement is to say it's lead, non-lead, or unknown. We don't have to give the exact material, but if we can designate it reasonably with good information that it's non-lead, then that's good enough for the rule. We'll probably take it a little further and get as much information as we can. So that's kind of what we'll be dealing with, is that 14% for this inventory.
So how are we going to get that information? Just solicit the homeowners individually?
There's a number of different approaches that we're working on. One is soliciting to homeowners. If you have information, share it. Another is we're coordinating with the county and asking, because the county inspects private service lines when they get them replaced. So we're asking for inspection records from the county, and we've got a good contact over there that's going to be helping to cross-reference our data for any replacements that have been made. There's you could do additional water quality sampling if there were a concern. We don't want to do excavation, but that is an option. And then there's also some other technologies that I'm looking into right now. There's one company that has the ability to send a device through the meter into the service line and detect whether it's lead or not. And I'm asking for a demo of that now just to see how that works. But there's some different options that are
That's
out
really
there.
curious.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the opportunity with that. Of
What about
moving it.
having customers to send in a water sample? That work, or that if they're built before 1990, then you can see if they tested positive, then you know there's something, whether it's a fixture or whether it's.
Yeah, so I
Yeah, it might be
have
expensive.
Kathy on the line to help me with water sampling questions, because I know there's a lot of possibility for things to go wrong when the customer leads the water sample. Kathy, I don't know if you want to add anything if you're on the phone.
Hi, everyone. So yes, sampling can be used as an effective tool for determining lead and copper in the presence of. It's one of the reasons why they are looking at moving to the 5th liter sampling instead of 1st liter sampling. Unfortunately, those samples do get pulled by the homeowners themselves. That is something that can't be pulled effectively by anybody at Loudon Water because of the retention time required prior to pulling that sample. So when you pull a lead and copper sample, there's at least an 8-hour retention time where that water needs to sit in the pipes undisturbed before that sample gets pulled. So in order for that to be pulled, we could coordinate closely with the customers, but it's much more effective for the customer to go ahead and pull that. Unfortunately, as you're pulling more samples and you're pulling especially multiple liters of samples, it just allows for the opportunity to have some sampling issues and some sampling concerns. So that's something that we would really need to work through. It's one of the reasons why, yes, it's definitely an avenue for us to potentially pursue, but we are pursuing some of these other avenues first.
Water
Should've waited
quality
an hour and a
expert.
half to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So, and kind of the second thing I have here is all utilities, if you have even one unknown, so pretty much all utilities have to prepare a lead service line replacement plan. So this is a plan we're going to put together that's going to outline, you know, what we're going to do to replace lead service lines in the system. Do we have a target number per year that we want to achieve and so on? So that's a plan we have to put together, which will be due on this October 16th deadline.
Who would be paying for the replacement of the service line?
So there are different approaches that are being taken. There is funding available from the government, so there are grants that are out there. So we're, you know, part of this collaboration we're doing with the county is we're going to talk to them about how, you know, how can we best come up with a plan? So if there are lead service lines out there, you know, can we get something together for the county that they can go to and request funding to help replace on the homeowner side, which is going to be a bigger hit for a homeowner. But we don't have any clarification yet on how that's going to work. You know, some people offer payment plans and incentives, or you reach out for grants, but that's still to be determined. And definitely a big decision point that we're going to have to make.
Is there
Clearly-
money in the infrastructure bill for any of this? Even though,
I think there's specific federal funding for this whole program that was even before that, that's set up. It's clear, this is clearly one of the biggest challenges for every utility across the country. It's going to
especially
be,
in the states that are.
Yeah. Yep.
troubled.
But yeah, we are, I mean, we are in a good place there because we don't think we're gonna have a big problem, but we need to have a plan. We do.
To your question, Mr. Allen, I think another highlight is that we have established a great point of contact with the county or set of contacts and the towns. And, you know, I think one of our high level goals will be to make this, you know, as seamless as possible for residents, not only in our system, but across the county, and try to do it in a way where it can be really effective. But I think we have their attention now, and I think everyone's you know, on the same sheet of music. So excited for you.
Hopefully you'll have one place the entire county can go to for funding.
That would be good. Yeah. I know what it costs to replace a line. I had a line break once.
Not cheap.
No, it's not cheap, not cheap. But the important thing was the inspector came out and said, my contractor, they have to put a shield over it. They weren't going to do that.
2.9 billion in the infrastructure bill, specifically for lead pipe replacement.
That'll go fast.
Yeah.
So let's get our share.
The third requirement is the sampling. We've already talked about that, additional sampling. Then the lead sampling or additional sampling in schools. That is another component of these requirements, frequent sampling. Number 5 only applies to us if we were to exceed action levels in our lead, which we don't anticipate. In our previous sampling that we've done, which isn't for the 5th liter, but we've always had non-detect levels of lead. But if we were to exceed an action level, we would need to review our corrosion control treatment and address that. And then the final requirement is public notifications. So if we have any unknown or lead service lines that we have in the system, starting with the October 16th deadline, we'll be required to reach out to property owners every year and notify them of the status of their service line and provide information. And again, this also has to be publicly made available on our website. So there'll be a searchable database. Actually, we have a map that's being developed where you can find your property and you can see what materials on water side and what materials the customer side. We have a pretty cool map that's in the works here. So that will.
Jessica,
be
remind me
available.
again, corrosion control. We put chlorine in the water, we put fluoride in the water. What's the corrosion control agent we put in there?
I have to go to Jessica Edwards on this one.
There's something impronounceable. I can't remember it. I don't know. Something. Marty, do you know?
Green, greens.
Well, we currently add phosphoric acid, which is a known corrosion inhibitor.
I'm sorry, what's it called?
It's phosphoric acid.
Phosphoric acid. Okay. And those are the only three compounds that we put into the water as it comes out of the system. Chlorine, fluoride, and phosphoric acid.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have a specific question. I use the WNOD trail quite a bit, and there are fountains in there that I'm willing to bet are lead. Do we have
Don't drink
any-
out of them.
Well, yeah, but when you're thirsty, you drink. But I mean, is there anything being done with them or the,
Have to be tested, won't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be tested like anything else.
what jurisdiction do they fall under? I mean, I think it's Park Authority.
Is that on Jim? Is that-
No.
Come on.
So,
Nova
well,
Parks.
they have to get their water from somewhere. Where do they get their water? So
Well, we talked about-
part of it's in Fairfax, part of it's in Loudon. If they get their
But the
water.
piping might be bad, but Marty, your brain's developed, so you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. But your other point is what about the 2/3 or so of the county that's on well? You know, are they any or do we have any responsibility to notify homeowners that are on non-public systems?
If they're not on our drinking water system.
That'll be the health department.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause some of those houses are very old too.
It's Mr. Kovalos.
It's a very, very good. And then these are our key takeaways.
These are your takeaways, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we pretty much covered all of this, but just, reiterating that on our side, no lead pipes. We're young, we are pretty low risk. We don't think we're gonna find, hopefully not any, but if we do, it's gonna be very minimal. And from the people that we've talked to that have been around forever, no one's ever said they've been able to see lead ever in the history of being here. And that's a good sign, but not enough documentation. So we haven't detected lead in our current water sampling process. We're not alone. This is nationwide. We're working with the community and entire Loudoun County, constant contact with VDH to make sure our approach is on target and everything. So we're in good shape with a lot of people working with us. We're already making really great progress on the inventory. So we're kind of focused on how do we get rid of those unknowns, and already working on our communication plan. We are committed to proactive communication, already working with the Sue's team regularly to come up with a good plan and make sure that we are coordinating with the Council of Governments and that we all have kind of a like strategy on this. And Loudon Water is committed to getting rid of lead. If we find any, we want it to go away, and we'll do what we can to make that happen. And finally, we'll keep you informed as this continues to progress. Let you know how things are going, and we're happy to answer any questions that may come up.
We really appreciate your presentation and very good. And thank you for answering our questions and having all these resources
Do my best.
to do that. But,
Yeah.
but we're here to help and let us know what we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll add, I don't know how long I've been here, maybe 6 years, something like that. But I mean, I continue to be so impressed the longer I'm here with the initiative that we're showing, with the systematic approaches that we're taking on all these different things. We're looking down the road for problems before they happen instead of just waiting for the problem to happen and then responding to it, which is what so many do. The vertical integration, having in-house folks, the predictive systems. I mean, it's so good, and it requires so much coordination, and it benefits so many people. And so I just feel I'm really grateful to everybody's efforts for that. There's a culture behind that as well that you all are continuing to perpetuate. And so all of that's just really, really good. And there's not that many communities in America that have that as a background. And so I'm really thankful to all of you for that.
I'd like to say the same thing, but having worked at a couple of different water utilities, you guys are hands down better than the other ones. I mean, I worked at Fairfax, DC Water, and WSSC. They're not up to this standard of this organization. It's really great.
Yeah, well done.
Well, I appreciate those words. And like I mentioned at the beginning, this is going to be a real brief mention, but no, we've kind of gone longer than normal here. It's been great discussion, but Sue is just going to make a couple comments on this EPA health advisory for the PFAS real
For
quick.
the PFAS, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just real quick, because I know this group has expressed some interest in this topic. But in mid-June, you may have seen some news stories about this, but EPA issued a new interim health advisory for PFAS. And the new interim health advisories will remain in place until EPA establishes a national primary drinking water regulation. But the big news is in 2016, the health advisory for PFAS was 70 parts per trillion. The new EPA health advisory that they issued in mid-June 2022 is 0.004 parts per trillion.
Wow.
So you can see it's a pretty drastic change from the advisory before that. And at this time, there is no instrument that can detect PFAS below 2 ppt. It's important that
Not 0.2, but 2.
2.
Just clarifying that.
So
Standard you can't test to.
correct,
Wow.
correct.
So, okay, that kind of,
So health advisories are non-enforceable and they're non-regulatory, but they provide technical information to, state agencies and public health officials. But just like lead and copper, as Jessica was describing, this new health advisory is going to affect all utilities nationwide and creates a host of communications challenges, as you can imagine. But as soon as we heard that this was coming down the road, we hopped on a couple of calls with our regional partners to coordinate messaging. So we have FAQs on our website, customer-facing web pages to inform our customers about what this means. Specifically, we are reiterating that we are passive receivers of PFAS, so we're stressing the importance of source water protection, obviously, as we always do. But the next steps is just we'll follow the guidance of EPA and VDH, and then plan to actively collaborate with regional and national partners just to learn and monitor and address PFAS to make sure we're providing safe drinking water.
We don't know what our PFAS level is, do we?
I'm sorry?
Do we know what our PFAS level is right now?
So we have participated in voluntary PFAS testing in 2021. And in all of our sampling locations, we have been non-detect. There was one location where we detected 4.5 ppt, but subsequent samples from that same location were non-detect. And Kathy, if I'm misspeaking, please correct me, but we are essentially non-detect for PFAS at our sampling
So
locations.
that means it could be below 2.
Right. And so passive means it comes in through our water supply.
It comes in through the environment. And so what we're trying to stress with our partners in the region, the nonstick pans, the pizza boxes, the popcorn bags, anything that would potentially have that chemical that you can stop using would be good, because anything ends up in the environment ends up in the water supply.
So that's part of the education.
Correct.
does this affect broad run at all?
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, I do believe that one of you mentioned that it is possible that it is below 2. And yes, while we were non-detect, as Sue mentioned, current technologies don't allow us to achieve the current health advisory. So it is possible that we would be at that health advisory and we don't know.
So the health advisory itself, right, being non-enforceable doesn't affect Broad Run, but any pending drinking water regulation will trickle down to wastewater treatment plant discharges because they contribute to the source water. So pretty much everything that we're doing on the drinking water side with PFAS, we are mirroring on the Broad Run side again to get ahead of this. So we're on those calls and monitoring just like everyone else, because we know that while it is pass through for us as well, that our discharge is a permittable source.
Why did EPA go to 0.004?
002. Oh, no, 004, you're right.
So the background on the health advisory was they they chose a limit, right? And it was children and the amount of PFAS that could suppress their immune system. But then they had to say, well, this is a lifetime exposure. So what portion might contribute from the drinking water? And so they said 20%. Just
Arbitrary.
picked 20%, right, as a guidance that we're going to say of a child's lifetime exposure, we're going to limit that for the drinking water, and then back calculated this number that you then can't really measure. So that's how you get to an unmeasurable number.
So at least there was some logic behind it.
And when water's coming into Trap Rock, we're not able to remove PFAS from the water, or are we?
So not with the current technologies are not PFAS removal technologies.
And the way that we remove PFAS, as we understand it, is charcoal, activated charcoal.
Granular activated carbon is really the main, but there are other methods. I mean, it's developing like wildfire right now, but most methods being developed are focused at high concentration removal. So we're struggling in then applying that to very, very low level. Here's Jessica to fill in more on that.
Yeah. It's very similar to what Kendra was talking about earlier. Reverse osmosis is also another surefire way to remove it, but it is incredibly expensive. All of the technologies are very expensive, and there's no guarantee yet that you'll get to the levels that you can remove to the levels that are part of the health advisory. Yeah, it's a complicated issue.
And so Broad Run already has granular activated carbon, right? So you don't operate it in the same way, right?
Okay. And then one final question, understanding that this is all voluntary, but is that affecting how we're choosing to sell our solids out of the plant? I understand that's all voluntary. Nobody's forcing us to do anything, but as we ourselves are thinking about that, are we changing our?
So today we are not, right? We are complying with the regulations as they exist today. What we are participating in is research to look at biosolids and where it's going. So the limit on biosolids is, again, protecting the source water. So the thought is, right, when it goes off those biosolids, is it transferring to the water that runs off, or is it transferring to the food that someone might eat or an animal might eat or something like that? So there's a lot of studies on that right now that's showing that it really doesn't transfer very far. But knowing that that is probably not going to stop regulations, we are absolutely positioning Broad Run for what are the steps it's going to take to address this in the biosolids as well. But it's a two-pronged thing. We're looking at sources we have coming into Broad Run and what can we do there, and then what do we do at the treatment plant. So absolutely, as we talk about phase 3, we've kept this in mind, and we'll be coming to you with movements that we're planning on making there to put us in the right direction.
Solids a big revenue source for us, or is it not so much?
Oh no, we pay someone else to take those. Yeah, they're a cost.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's a cost. So if we can't sell, well, not sell, if we can't get rid of them the conventional way that we've been doing, then our cost to get rid of those solids would
Goes up.
increase. And on an order of magnitude, do you have a sense of that?
I don't at this time.
Okay.
And it's going to be a compounding factor though, because many of us land apply. If you can't land apply, it has to be landfilled.
Yeah.
So we know landfill costs right now.
Mhm.
It's going to be scary to see them when all the biosolids have to go to a landfill, right? That cost will look different. It's a circle though. We take the landfill leachate, right? So if that PFAS does travel, I mean, we haven't solved the problem, right? We've just moved the sources around.
Send it to the moon.
I'm with you
Fires
though.
in the
It's-
ocean.
Should be pricey.
It is to stop producing it, right? This is just a chemical that we need to stop using, which is why we're saying, oh man, once it's in the biosolids, it's in deep and it's going to cost a lot. So let's try to treat the sources before it gets to Broad Run, right? So we are doing the source sampling and identifying those pathways now to say, it's the smart way.
Should that be part of our sort of legislative agenda at some point in the future, where there's a federal or state rule that says stop selling the pans that have this, stop making the pizza boxes? We can put out a notice, but the fact that the things are continuing to be created, they're going to continue to be used if they're created. I mean, isn't that addressing the actual source from a regulatory standpoint? Should that be on our radar in the future when we're talking about lobbying and things of that nature?
Awareness, yeah.
It's a
Well,
good
it seems
question,
like
yeah.
Common sense, you know, for.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
That's the
There you
source.
go, find logic again.
Just have staff do it.
Well, no,
Yeah.
but you know, like for the whole state. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously this affects everyone, so.
Yeah, this stuff's changing so much. It's a good question. I think at this point, as a water utility industry, kind of collectively, I think everybody's been sort of taking that first step into kind of the education of it. But whether it goes that next step of really pursuing in that way, I don't know. I think it's happening so fast. I don't know that that's really been discussed on a broader level, but
Who would regulate
it
that
makes
at the
sense.
Federal level, the EPA, maybe?
Yeah,
Something,
Yeah.
they go after the manufacturers using it.
I mean,
Is this a chemical that is
It's not one
produced to
chemical,
make the
it's-
product? Or is this a chemical that's a byproduct of making the product?
It is the product, right?
It's a
So
product, and it's
It
over
is-
7,000 different compounds.
Okay.
PFAS is a group of over 7,000 compounds.
Right, but is it compounds that are a result of the process, or is it made to produce the
But
product?
like Teflon, it's.
She's
the
saying it
inner
is the
material.
product.
It is the
It's
product.
the
It is the
product.
product.
And there's,
So
It's why your eggs don't stick.
yeah,
Yep.
it's specifically putting it on your clothes so they're waterproof, right? If you
Oh,
get
yeah.
water resistant, then you're not
Water
PFAS, but if you
resistant,
want
yeah.
waterproof, you've got
working
them.
shirts.
Your Glide dental floss has PFAS in it. It's what makes the floss go in there.
So we need
How the
EPA
heck are you
to
gonna
pass a
reg-
rule to
regulate
say,
that?
stop
I
making
know.
stuff with this,
Well,
just
they
like
figure
they've
out a way to
made
make it
such
without it.
rules in the past.
Right, and so they did for 2 of those chemicals, and so then they switched to 2 more, and that's where in the health advisory, we see them now tackling like the 2 more. So I think they're struggling to,
Too, but you're saying there's 7,000?
Well, in that class, we'll call PFAS. There's over.
There's 4 compounds now that,
yeah.
that
four
they're
compounds that are on the
health
list.
advisory list, yeah. But PFAS, like to your point, it's like 7,000. But
Yeah.
the education, to your point, is really the most important because, Flint ruined everything for water utilities. I mean, the trust just
Right.
dissolved from that. So that's why our focus right now is really on the education to make sure people understand that we're not producing PFAS, we're not manufacturing PFAS, but there's things you can do to reduce your exposure.
Mhm. Well, it'd be great if that gets on our radar for next year or whatever. I don't see any reason why we can't, with all our trade groups and associations, say, look, let's just ask EPA, just ban this stuff. Otherwise, we're having to remediate it. The costs that you mentioned, it's a problem. We know it's a problem. So let's just stop making stuff with this.
And I think that in the Commonwealth, there's been a pretty level-headed approach to this issue in terms of, I think the Commonwealth didn't want to get out ahead and try to set limits and watch and see what the EPA did. And, and I think with the new administration, there's certainly I think a leaning toward, what you're describing. But yeah, we're going to continue to engage in that way through our industry organizations, EWWAA, BAMLA, and others.
NACLA will be
NACLA,
very
yeah.
active in that.
Thank you.
This has been a long session. It's been a very, very informative, useful session.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for the
Absolutely.
interest and participation. I think, we feel like this committee is really kind of taking on the life that, we thought, it's really generates a lot of good discussion. And so thanks for being a part of that. And like I said, we've got one more this calendar year, likely that we'll hold in probably kind of a late September, October timeframe.
Quite a number of topics on our
Yep.
list.
Yep.
But it's interesting with some of the things that come out, the use of the tools, business intelligence tools we have. Really good, it really amplifies. Before we call for adjournment. Thank you for. So if. Adjourn.
Second.
Everyone, I really appreciate the time.